with respect to Prime Minister Modi inaugurating as many as 15 new airport projects worth then 10,000 crore rupees. Now, these developments and announcements coming on the back of course, the impending elections are good news for people in general, especially those hoping to take to Indian skies. So there'll be more money that will be put into development of airports, terminals, perhaps seating capacity, better infrastructure.
Absolutely. So let's break this down. So, the 15 airport projects that we are talking about, actually 12 of them are existing terminals which are getting renovated or which are getting expanded. And these 12 expanded terminals are likely to see an additional traffic capacity or load capacity of about 52 million passengers every year. So that is obviously a big number of additional flyers who can now use these 12 expanded stroke renovated modernized terminals. This is one part of the story. The other part of the story is 3 brand new airports which are going to come up. Now, Prime Minister Modi, of course, yesterday was speaking from the heart of Uttar Pradesh, from the city of Azamgarh. And Azamgarh gets an airport. And in addition to that, you've also got cities like Aligarh as well as Moradabad, which have been sort of, SME clusters, manufacturing clusters, which are now going to get new airports. So broadly what we are looking at, and again, one should be, I think, as optimistic, as cautious about what this is going to do for the country. Now, at one level, we know that the Modi government's push over the last 9.5 years, almost 10 years now, has been on infrastructure. That got, exacerbated multifold since COVID-19 pandemic. When we realize that consumption is going to come down, you've got to keep the wheels of the economy chugging, and hence the heavy lifting of economic growth has to be done by the government of India. And that is when the government undertook these massive capex projects. So building roads, for example, 5,000 kilometers of road highway network is one part of that capex push. Modernization of Indian railways, which not just includes the Vande Bharat sort of trains, but also modernization of railway stations is another capex push. And now this redevelopment and modernization and new airports, new terminals as well as new full-fledged airports coming is on the back again of that capex push, which the government wants to do for the infrastructure sector. Now, obviously, we know that anytime there is an infra push, the multiplier effect is immense. So look at a city like Azamgarh, for example. Once it gets an airport, it is obviously going to also have hotels come up. It is going to have cab aggregators coming in. It will have a flurry of maybe, McDonald's and Pizza Huts and other such food chains coming in to attract or sort of, to add value to all the travelers who are coming in.
All the allied sectors
All the allied sectors
develop.
are going to. And hence, the multiplier effect I've heard somewhere is that for every 1 rupee spent on real infrastructure, you actually get about 7 rupees worth. There's a 7x multiplier effect of rewards. But we've also seen in the past projects like the Udan scheme, which the government had launched, in 2015-16, if I'm not mistaken, did not really take off.
Absolutely.
So we've seen, airports, the airport which came up in Pantnagar, there's an airport that came up in Durgapur. We haven't really seen these airports sustain their ability to attract flyers simply because airlines did not find it viable enough to fly very few flights into that sector because there aren't enough takers. So I think the government, while inaugurating new projects and pushing capex investments for infrastructure is great, and the multiplier is likely to be amazing. But on the contrary, in case any of these projects don't kick off, then it is pretty much sunk cost, which is the taxpayers' money, which gets written off after a few years. So the whole model has to be built in a way that you look at these industry clusters where new airports are coming with an assurance perhaps from airlines that they will definitely fly into those sectors for a sustained period of time. But signing those deals is also difficult because airlines like to keep their operations very nimble. They want to introduce or cancel or alter routes that they fly in or fly out of depending on traffic.
Absolutely.
So, for every empty seat that an airline carries or an aircraft carries to a particular city, that is an opportunity loss. So, I think new airport schemes, new announcements, new infrastructure push is excellent to keep the GDP going and hope for the multiplier. But we will have to see enough action even by way of passengers wanting to fly to those cities and hence the pressure on airlines to make it viable to fly regular flights into these cities.
All right. And obviously, it's not easy for airlines because they will only fly on routes which are economically viable for them, as you rightly said. Very thin margins essentially ensure that you do not let any seat go vacated.
And thin margins in a lucky scenario. There are airlines which are still struggling to make money.